It never shows me when it's actually live. All right, here we go. We are live now. Sweet. What's up? One of these days I'm going to get good at doing that before I even start the show. All right, good morning, everybody. It's Friday. Happy Friday to you. I hope you're not too happy that it's Friday. I, for one, know that Friday is just another day in a long week's worth of just stuff that has to happen. I think the thing that I'm the most excited about with Friday is that it's the day before Saturday, which means I get to spar tomorrow. That's always exciting to me. So I'm going to dive in today a little bit sooner. I had a couple of conversations yesterday with a client and then a friend. Well, both of them are friends, but one of them happens to be paying me money. And they were talking about some of the content. I got some big stuff coming on Monday I'm excited about, but I wanted to get some eyes on it just to get people's opinions, because I trust people and I want them to give me some opinion. Sorry about this. All right, now we're good. I didn't have the auto pan set, so now it's going to switch. All right, you're over there. Anyway, I had some conversations, and they opened up my mind to some of the things that I should be talking about. Like, I actually was kind of thinking about this. My mind, I think, was preparing myself for that conversation to happen. But I realized I have some other things that I can say, and other things that would be, I think, valuable for people to hear. And really, the best part is that it's kind of the stuff that I've been wanting to do anyway, which is just telling my story. So there's a lot of stuff that is going to come over the next couple of weeks. We're going to dig into some of the specifics of my past, some things that have happened. I want to go into all sorts of places. This show is not meant to be just business, although it has been the last few days. But I want to talk about all sorts of things and really dive in to the specifics of what's happened. In fact, maybe what I'll do is just start from the beginning and tell my story piece by piece, 15 minutes at a time each morning, and go from there. But what I wanted to do today, this actually could be the first edition of that, because what I want to talk about today goes back pretty much that far. I was listening to, it's so funny how everything comes together. I was listening to Gary's podcast this morning. It's my morning radio show, which is whatever he puts up on the podcast. But I listened to it not only just because of what he has to say, because he's kind of like a broken record. He says the same thing over and over again. But I really like the different ways that he says it. And he and I think a lot alike, or I should say I think a lot like he does. And so it makes sense. So I like it. And I've actually legitimately tried to find other people to follow and other podcasts to listen to. Nothing's like it. So, but anyway, that's not the point. This morning he had his business partner on, and he was talking about the story of when he was a kid. And Gary asked him a question. He said, "When did you realize that you needed to make a change, or you needed to because his business partner grew up really poor, and so he's like, do you know what age you were at when you made a change?" And he said, "I remember I was 10." And I remember when I was 10, I had this little interesting introspective moment where I thought about what was I doing when I was 10. And I actually distinctly remember being 10, because when I was 10, I had my first moment of self-realization where I was like, interesting, I'm 10 years old. I distinctly remember that thought, and that's like the inflection that my voice made. I think my voice was 2 octaves higher then, but that was the sentiment at the time. I was like, man, I'm 10 years old. I remember when I was 10 remembering back to when I was 6 or 7 or 8 and thinking man, when I'm 10, I'm going to have it figured out. I'm going to know. And then when I was 10, I was like, man, I'm here. And that actually happened several times. There were several instances in my life over the next couple of decades where I would get to a point and I'd be like, man, I'm 21. Jeez, this is crazy. Or, man, I'm in college. Wow. Or, man, I just graduated from college. Man, that's insane. Man, I have been out of college for 5 years. There were a lot of these things that really struck me as interesting because they were milestones that I had sort of set in my own mind beforehand, which was really interesting. But I remember also that took me back to that moment in time. And the guy, Matt Higgins is the guy's name, he was talking about trusting his instincts. at the time when so when he was 16, he dropped out of high school and he went to college, and then went to law school and did a bunch of other things. And now he's a partner in a bunch of Gary's business ventures, like a self-made success story. But he said at the time when he dropped out of high school, nobody got it. Everybody thought he was throwing his life away. And he said if he hadn't done that, he probably would never have made it. He'd probably, be a drug dealer or something. He didn't say that, and that's probably an offensive thing for me to say. But anyway, he wouldn't have made it to where he is today because he had to take that leap of faith and trust his own instincts in order to make that change, in order to make that improvement in his life. And that got me thinking about, so I was thinking about when I was 10, and then he said that, and I was thinking about instincts that I've had over my life that I either did or didn't listen to. And I remember growing up in the Mormon church, and distinctly when I was in my teens. It started when I was about 12. When I was like 12 or 13, and all the way through high school, and all the way into college and everywhere else, I distinctly remember having the thought, this is going to be a little bit offensive to some of you, so I apologize, but I'm just being honest. I distinctly remember having the thought, man, most of these people don't know what's going on. Like, most of these people don't really get it. Now, I was 12, so what do I know, right? But I early on had an instinctual understanding of what was supposed to be happening and what was actually important. And it was clear to me that the people around me didn't get it, that they were focused on other things. They were focused on the wrong things. And, later in life, I never told anybody that. This is, as par for the course for me, I've bared my most secret, intimate thoughts with the public. I've never shared that with anyone ever. But as I look back and I think about the decisions I made since then, and like the decision to leave the church altogether, it was predicated on the same thing. Because my problem with Mormonism was not the doctrine. It was not really the top-down leadership, the high-level leadership. It was the individual implementation and understanding of the doctrine itself by the everyday members. Like, I just didn't feel like I fit. Now, this is, again, I understand this makes me sound like I think that I'm this hotshot, this great guy or whatever. But to this day, I still think very, very strongly that the doctrine of Mormonism, from a Christianity standpoint, I have no problems with it. And in fact, I think I prefer it. If I'm considering a Christian faith, I'm considering a Christian religion, I think I prefer Mormonism over everything else. What I do not prefer is everything that goes along with it, which is the social aspect, it's the implementation, it's the localized direction from people that don't have any real experience. And really, it's how easy it is for Mormons in general to be so caught up in their own viewpoint that it becomes, it's kind of like, I talked about this the other day, dogmatic. They become so dogmatic about the way that a certain thing should be interpreted that they miss the point. And my thought this morning was, so I spent a lot of time, you can't have those thoughts as a 17-year-old high school kid in Mesa, Arizona, like Gilbert, Arizona, forgive me. So Gilbert's actually worse. It's more Mormon than Mesa is. You can't think like that there because you're 17 and there are people there that have been Mormon for twice as long as you've been alive. And so what you do is when you think that, you have to immediately go to, well, who am I? What do I know? I'm just a kid, all these things, and really suppress that feeling. But now I look back and I think to myself, that was instinct. Like, I picked up on that early on. I understood and picked up on the fact that I didn't really fit with those people. And again, none of those people are bad people. I'm not trying to say that all Mormons that don't think exactly like me are bad people. But I do think that I do have call it self-pride, call it whatever, but I do think I have a pretty good handle on. I spent a lot of time going super deep on the doctrine of Mormonism, like super, super deep. And I feel like I have a pretty good handle on not specifics. Like I wouldn't say that, I would be able to recite the entire Book of Mormon to you. But if, 4 years ago, if you quoted a verse, I could tell you about where it was. I could tell you who said it, right? And more importantly, I can tell you what was actually meant, because what the context said in that area, right? Or even more recent leaders of the church and things like that. But the thing I had an issue with was that it seemed like everybody was missing the point. Everybody was they couldn't see the writing on the wall, not in the sense that the church was going to go away, but they couldn't understand their own fallibility. Which I guess, in our perspective, is kind of ironic, considering the fact that I was the one who noticed that they didn't think that they thought they were perfect, and yet I know that I had a hard time with understanding my own, my own overambition or whatever it was. But I thought it was very interesting this morning as I was thinking about it. If we think about instinct, and not even you can be 16 and have an instinct that supersedes what a wise person has and end up winning in the end, like this guy did. And I'm on the other side. It took me another 15 years. What's the math on that? Yeah, it took me another 15 years from when I first had took issue with the Mormon Church. 15 years of trying to grind it out before I finally made the decision to be where I am now. And it's crazy to think that we, as a culture, it compounds, because there's the human culture, which is listen to people that are older than you, which is generally a good idea, but we take it as hard dogmatic gospel. Then there's the American culture, which is you got to listen to people who know what's going on, because that's the way capitalism works. You get mentored and then move things. Like that's the system that we put ourselves in. Then Mormon culture is you don't make decisions for yourself. You don't make these determinations about what you think and what you feel. You do what you were told. You go to your mission. You go on your mission. You go to church for 3 hours a day. Although now it's 2 apparently, which is kind of exciting for them. You go to church for 2 or 3 hours a day. You go on your mission. You spend 2 hours. You pay tithing. You do all this stuff, and you don't question. You just do it. And I always took issue with that from the very beginning. And I think that is where that instinct kicked in, and I had issues with it, but I didn't know exactly how to do anything with that. All I knew was that I didn't really like it. And so what that says to me is I feel like I can trust my instincts more than I have been. Like more recently, there's another big one that I'll just touch on, but I want to maybe not tomorrow, maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week probably. It'll fit because of the stuff that's getting released on Monday. I want to talk about why I am so focused on what I'm focused on. And I haven't really talked publicly about it too much, but I am super focused on completely reinventing the digital marketing done-for-you services agency model. And it clicked for me today why. I didn't know anything about this. I'm not like a market analyst. I don't really know these things. But I had an instinct that the ability for digital marketing agencies, like what I do, and what I have done, to charge premium prices for their services has a shelf life. And when I say premium prices, I mean like $25,000 for a 2-day event. $15,000, $17,000 a month for ongoing retainer services. The ability for agencies to spend that kind of money has a shelf life. Or not to spend that kind of money, but to charge that kind of money has a shelf life. Because the next 3 to 5 years, it's becoming more clear to me. I'm listening to what Gary's saying, predicting, and I trust him. And I think that puts a face on the thing that I'm afraid of. There is an end to the moment. There's going to come a moment where it's no longer viable for businesses to spend that kind of money in the same volume that they have been. Like a lot of these business owners don't realize what's coming. And one of the things on Monday, there's a post coming out which talks about training for the future, getting ready for the hard times. And the funny thing is, I didn't even actually really know deep down what the point of that video was, like what I was trying to get at. I just knew that I wanted people to stop resting on their laurels and stop thinking that they were okay and realize that there's work to be done. Right? It's not just like fancy dinners, fancy cars, handshakes, and conversations over drinks. Like real work that needs to be done now that's going to prepare you for what's going to happen later. And Gary said it perfectly this morning. Everyone, I can guarantee that I would even think that I was just ripping off what he said, but I promise, I think we think in tandem. He today said, I'm eating crow now at Vayner, at his agency company, because he knows that the budget of the people, of his clients, is going to shrink by 75% over the next 3 to 5 years. And so he is willing to do more for less now and cut out the upside, cut out the potential margin on the services, because he knows that when it happens, there's already going to be a decrease in budget. And so if he's willing to do the work and land the deal and do a deal for less, because even though he knows that he's leaving money on the table, when it hits, when the crisis hits, those customers are going to stay with him because it's still in their budget, it's still affordable to them. And I think everything sort of makes sense now, like why I've been doing what I've been doing. Because the last 3-4 months, I have been really focused on creating sustainable, low-cost, high-value agency model. And I got it. I've sold it to like 3 people. I mean, I can't sell it to a lot of people, right? But the people I've sold it to, they're used to spending $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month, and they're spending $3,500 with me. And it's because I can create that relationship and for what I'm trying to do long term. So anyway, I'm excited about the future, and really today I think it was about, if I can bring this back to maybe an action or something. If you're watching this and you think you know something about something, 2 things. First, the worst that can happen to you is you fail. Right? So we got to get over the fear of failure, because fear of failure is what keeps you from taking action in the first place. And most of the time, the failure is not even that bad. Like net long term. And second, you can trust your instincts more than you think. Right? Especially if you know you have good instincts. If you have something you can lean on, something you can pin in your mind that says, oh, I was right about that. Like, I didn't make the right decision. You have to be self-aware enough to realize that you didn't capitalize on it correctly. But if you understand that you actually have some pretty good instincts, then you can lean into the things that you're actually doing. Instead of don't do what I did, spend 15 years. I can't tell you how much of my life is just wasted. Like, I don't regret a lot of this. I mean, I had a lot of experiences that made me who I am today, and I wouldn't be who I am today. And so it's very hard for me to say that I regret anything. But if I look back, and if I had made this decision instead of when I was 29 or 28, if I had made it when I was 19, I wouldn't have spent 2 years in Ukraine, which means I wouldn't have spoken Russian, which means I probably would never have gotten to Muay Thai. But I probably would have gotten into business earlier. I may have stayed at Infusionsoft and had more of a vested interest. Some of the people that I know now that are leaving Infusionsoft are worth a lot more than I am, because they're stock vested, all of it. And if I had stuck around from the initial phases, got all my stock and then not vested, I would be worth a pretty penny right now. So it's interesting, but not to mention the 6 years of my life that I wasted being married to a girl that didn't like me and that I didn't really like. Right? Huge chunks of life that I think go back to a decision to not follow my instinct at an early age. And just because you're young doesn't mean you're not right. Anyway, I hope you have a good weekend. It is Friday, so don't celebrate too much, but sparring tomorrow. I'm actually going to record sparring as per the usual, but I'm going to start putting the videos up and let you watch them, because why not? So you can check out what we do when we spar. Anyway, peace.